But to get back to what's Nazi about us nowadays, and when I think about with Peikoff outlining something that's very important, and that's the whole idea of collectivism, which is what's been in the schools now for quite some time. You know, all this group work is fine, but basically, and of course what we see in society with game shows and stuff, all this stuff about, well, you know, you're nothing except what of your value. And also it was an invitation, according to Peikoff, not to think.
Exactly. Just
act. And of course they used economic fears, xenophobia as well, but you have to prepare.
Well, they've dumbed down the education system as much as they can, you know, and they're still working on it, I'm sure. But, you know, what better way to keep people from really being able to think critically than to dumb down the education system to the point where they aren't taught how to think critically? You know, I know there's a big difference. Not that I had a tremendously great education as a young person, but I see a difference in what kids are learning now and what they learned during my era. And one thing that just amazes me is the inability to write and to speak the English language. I'm just amazed at how poorly people communicate. And I read a lot of emails in the course of business, and a lot of people just, you know, they can't communicate very well at all.
I tell you
it's
what.
It's not that they're dumb, it's just they haven't been taught.
No, they're dumb. Hey.
We have one not been taught and one dumb.
Well, if you ever look...
Maybe both, I don't know.
Whenever you go to read an article online and there's a section for comments, I mean, I would have to say 90% of the time, well, 90% of the time it's the spelling is really bad. I'd say 70% of the time, the people who state stuff are absolutely idiots. I mean, I won't go into all that. But anyway, that's where you find out where America's at. When you look at the people who consider themselves educated, informed perhaps, erudite, urbane enough, whatever you want to call it, to comment, and you look at this stuff and it's like, oh man, are we in trouble?
Yeah, they can't write a simple declarative sentence. I mean, they can't punctuate, they can't spell. You know, it's like they were just, you know, they sit them in a classroom for a certain number of hours a day and then pass them. You know, it's just, you know, try to keep the natives from getting too restless. You know, and that's about the best they seem to do.
Well, try this on for size, because this says a lot, and you'll appreciate this, and it ties into what's going on here, especially with. Look, we know what's happened in this country, but Republican registered voters and Democrat registered voters aren't getting it. And that is, you can fight about which one of your guys and women should be in office, but the thing is, legislation is being passed, somebody's passing it, and it's all pro-corporation. So, like I had said, the same soccer moms that are upset about the Constitution and are also upset about all the crazy stuff that's being put in the food, you know, for their children, and they don't put it together. It's like Soccer Sally, and that's what Pierce used to say. Remember Soccer Sally, Mom, I think he would say. And Joe Sixpack, that were the two. Sally Soccer Mom and Joe Sixpack. But those same people who are all PO'd, and rightfully so, about food that is obviously becoming more and more corrupted, don't understand it's being allowed to happen by those you vote for in D.C. You can't blame the passage of this stuff on the other party, because if you took a look at the voting for this stuff, you'd find all your people are doing this. So what's the point?
What they don't get is they have controlled opposition. What they don't get is that the American political system is like a vulture preying upon the American taxpayer, you know, with two wings, a left and right wing, if you can really even call them that. You know, you've got the Republicans and the Democrats really doing the same thing.
Of course.
They're being controlled by the same corporations. Your vote is meaningless. You know, it really is. I mean, you know, it's mostly cosmetic. You know, well, I don't want to vote for that guy because he's got an ugly nose. You know, and it's makes about as much sense.
Well, I mean, you simplified it, but the thing is, most people vote against the other party rather than for their own.
Right,
I mean, that's what it's come down to. But in the meantime, all this other stuff that's probably even more injurious to our, quote, freedom, because of what it does to us on the inside, which should belong to us but really doesn't anymore, is being allowed by these creeps in the district. So what is the point? You're absolutely right. But I'm also
long ago, the powers that be within the elites, and I'll just use the term elites, they discovered that they could control the American government and could control American society if they controlled the media. So they started buying up the media in the late 1800s, and they bought up the majority of the newspapers way back then, and eventually they've bought up the radio and television stations or networks as well. So, I mean, you really don't get news on mainstream news that tells you anything that they don't want you to hear, and by that I mean the elites. And everything is colored by the way they want the public to see it.